Hi everyone, I'm Max.
I'm Tatiana.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Joe, and we're Trust the Brain.
So our process can really be divided, into a few general parts. So we have the beginning, the interview, pre-production, production, and editing. And the member that really focused on that part will go over those. So starting off, we have Tatiana with the beginning.
Okay, so we knew since the beginning that the most important part of the project was going to be communication. Like, if there's no good communication, there's no way the group and the project could be successful. So in that first class, when we talked about Artifact 3, we met up here and we all just decided to make a group meet, which was like our salvation. We decided absolutely everything, from the name of our group, all the meetings, deadlines, what we were going to talk about, everything. Just GroupMe was like saved our lives many times. Then of course we had to choose the topic. So we all have like really different interests. So once we had to choose a topic, there was a really wide range of things. We went from steroid use to stem cell research. We wanted to kind of focus on 3D printing, so at least we didn't do that. And then deep brain stimulation, which at the end we just all realized that it was the most interesting one for each one of us. So it was why not? We all want to know about it, we all want to learn, so we just decided to go for it. And then the most important part was the research. So we ended up creating a Google Docs, and we decided that we would each look at articles and just decide which one was the most interesting, or the one that would work the most to explain to all of you what deep brain stimulation was. And that would also help us later on for the bibliography. But throughout the whole project, our Google Docs just was all the group reports were there, our bibliography, everything was there, and it was good.
So I was in charge of the interview, and once we got our topic settled down, it was time to find somebody to interview. So we met and kind of decided, let's find somebody to interview. So we did some research in a group meeting a little bit after, and then the next group meeting came along, and we still didn't find anyone. There was one person at Emory, so that was a little challenging. So we didn't really know what to do about that. We were looking through the biomedical engineering page on EdTech, and saw they had some kind of connection with Emory. So that made me think of, I have this family friend who does research at Emory on brains. So I kind of called him for a little bit, and I was like, hey, what do you do research in? This would be really nice if you did deep brain stimulation. So he doesn't do deep brain stimulation, but he does something very, very similar to it, which is still sticking some kind of electrode into the brain. So it's very similar. So he knows a lot about deep brain stimulation and how it works, and ethical implications especially. So you can flip the slide. So I called him again, when do you want to set up an interview? And he said, well, I don't know about you coming here, because that would waste a lot of your time. There's a bus that runs from Tech to Emory. It takes an hour to get there, an hour to get back. So that just wastes 2 hours of our time. Nobody needs that. So we decided just to Skype an interview, and so we wrote up a few questions. Max and I did the interview. So here are some of the questions we asked him, and they mostly pertain to just ethics and trying to get a background, and trying to make sure he had good information on the topic, making sure he was a good resource. So when we were Skyping, we wanted to set up that whole visual element and good body language, so woven elements, So I think we did that fairly well in the interview, and we wrote questions too. So.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate how lucky we were with Andrew's family friend, Dr. Drain. That GIF that was on there, that was really us before we found him, and then Andrew walks in and says, hey, I have a family friend, and we were like, oh my gosh.
I went through research on Georgia Tech's page, just trying to find deep brain stimulation. One grad student had written one paper about it, and that's all I found on their page. So having the family friend really did come and save us.
So after the interview, I was kind of we can start making this podcast now. And I think this was around the time Dr. Hoffman said, all right, all your time should be focused on this podcast. So we really tried to kick it into gear. And so we needed to decide on a style still. We had talked about maybe an NPR type, just a bare bones type podcast. Or I think we also brought it up in a meeting with Dr. Hoffman, a roundtable discussion, and she pointed out that that wouldn't really allow for full development of our argument. So we kind of went away from that, and we actually had a whole group meeting to decide, like, what the heck are we doing? What's our podcast going to be? So I had heard of comedians in a car getting coffee. I've never watched it, but I mean, the title is pretty self-explanatory. It's two comedians in a car getting coffee, and it's actually Jerry Seinfeld. So Joe pulled up a clip of that, and we watched it, and we were like, this could really work for our podcast. So, and we're going to show you how we use some elements from that in a minute. But so after that, we had an idea, and we needed a script. So I started working on that, and I got a little carried away. Like I made it look like very official, like I had the italicized names in their lines. And just with writing the script, one of the things I found was I was writing other people's lines, like Andrew's lines, for example. He's another doctor in the car with me. And I was like, you know, I don't know how Andrew talks all the time. So I found that a little interesting. So what I actually did was email that over to him, say, look over your lines. If this doesn't sound like something you would say, change it. And then, of course, on the spot when we were recording, we ad-libbed. But if you could go ahead and go to the...
I would like to add something on this. I thought the idea of using comedians in a car getting coffee was perfect because we want to go informative style with our podcast. Like Max said, we talked about doing NPR, bare bones. But I thought, and we thought that it should be a little more casual to expand the audience. And because we're younger people, sometimes we get bored with things such as NPR. So I think going with the style of comedians in a car getting coffee, it's still like direct interview kind of, and it's very informative, but at the same time it gives a casual aspect to it, and it also plays on the idea of like you're not at a coffee shop, which is what most people would think of, you're going to the coffee shop. So this is a clip from the show.
This is a 1963 Corvette Stingray in silver blue with a blue interior, kind of a dark purplish upholstery. Killer.
And then here's just a sample of the beginning of the podcast, what it may sound like.
The 2008 Toyota Avalon. Sleek and sexy, it's a car for more refined taste. With a 86 engine, this car screams power. The interior leather was forged by the finest Italian leather makers. Responsive to the slightest touch, the Avalon tears up the track.
Okay, so that kind of shows you how we were inspired by the show. So production, just some basics. We met one night over at West Village, and we actually recorded it in my car because, I mean, we wanted to add some authenticity. No, we were not driving while recording it, thankfully. That would have been dangerous, but we just used my iPhone. We found that the audio quality was fine. It sounded pretty good. So if you could go to the next one. We learned some general lessons. So rehearse your lines because we had the script, we were almost kind of lazy. We were like, oh, we'll just read off the script, but we found ourselves stumbling over words and not really getting the sound we wanted. So Then we started, hey, let's read over this and do multiple takes to get that sound we want. Some don'ts that we learned: don't podcast and drive. That's just obvious. Don't drop your phone. This is kind of a weird one to put on here, but I had dropped my phone and it was kind of broken. So I know when Joe was editing, I couldn't physically get the button to press to stop recording. So for every take, there was probably 30 seconds of me just being like, crap, turn off. Piece of crap, turn off. So Joe had to go through and listen to all of that. One of the segments in our podcast, because we're talking about some serious ethical issues, we wanted to take a minute and lighten the mood. So we did a Guess That Song segment. And I'm kind of the host of the show, so Andrew was the contestant in this. Don't ask Andrew what song is playing because he doesn't know. But I think I played everything from the Beatles to Future and just nothing. So
You actually played the Beatles?
Yeah, it was the first
the
song.
first, see, he still doesn't.
Okay, so after they recorded, Max sent all the audio files to me through email. I downloaded them and I tried to import them to Audacity, which it didn't let me do because of the file type. So then I had to go convert all the files to WAV, I believe. Then I could import them into Audacity. So these are all like vocal files. I haven't imported in sound effects yet. Because that plans to be my last step, are sound effects. And kind of my process for going about editing is that I'm going through and clipping all the vocals together first, just like the script. And then in the script, it was really nice. Max had already pulled out the time segments of the video, of the interview that we wanted to use. So I could just clip those out of the interview and just kind of line them up. So this is kind of the linear progression, and then as I take the next vocal, I'll move it up to the top and scoot it over just to line it up. And then I'll go back through in the end and I'll add all the sound effects, whether that's car horn or braking, and then the music and everything like that. So that will be the majority of the editing. Our closing thoughts.
So just one thing for me, I was kind of the one always texting and reminding, like, hey, have you done this? We need to do this. So maybe something they learned from it was I'm the most annoying person ever. But no, just working with a group and is something that you don't always do. So it adds a bit of a challenge just getting things done. Because where if it's one person, you can just knock it out whenever you're free, but you really have to coordinate with the group. So.
Well, for me, at the beginning, I was very hesitant. I did not have any clue how we were going to do this. It was just like a podcast. How are we supposed to make a podcast? It was a problem for me. But honestly, I think I was in a very great group. They're all really responsible, and like we got stuff done, which honestly, wow, I'm amazed. But I learned like how to manage time too, because like honestly, all these weeks of exams, I kind of break down mentally. But hey, we did it, and the deep brain stimulation is honestly really awesome. And even though it does have its ethical implication, it is something that is helping and could help even more people.
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously very pleased with how easy the interview was to get, but also just deep brain stimulation too. I didn't think that was going to be a very interesting topic. Like I just kind of went along with it, just like, yeah, I could maybe get interested in this. But I did some research, and then I found myself doing some more research and doing some more research just kind of for entertaining myself even. So I was very pleased with that as well.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest thing I took away from it. I'm interested into biomedical things, and I found deep brain stimulation more interesting than I thought, and then also learning how to audio edit, which I had never done before. Questions?
That's it.